The following episode includes a discussion about a sensitive topic, suicide. It is our goal to approach this content with caution and understanding. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide or self-harm, please seek help from a mental health professional or a helpline in your country. This episode aims to raise awareness and provide information, especially now during National Suicide Prevention Week, which runs from September 10th to the 16th. This discussion is not a substitute for professional medical or psychological advice.
Welcome to Wellness Rebranded. We know there is so much conflicting health and fitness advice out there.
And you're tired of the wellness fads, endless diets, and impossible standards that make you feel like nothing you do is ever enough.
You're ready to tune into your mind and body and feel empowered around health.
This is the Wellness Rebranded podcast. We're the healing trio here to help you redesign your relationships with food, fitness, and yourself.
I'm Elizabeth, registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor.
I'm Maria, licensed mental health therapist.
And I'm Tara, personal trainer.
Together, we're changing the narrative on health away from diet culture, hustle culture, and toxic positivity and towards healthful self-care.
So grab your water bottle and get ready to laugh, learn, and grow. And let's start rebranding your wellness journey.
Welcome to a new episode of Wellness Rebranded. Elizabeth and Tara are not here with me today, but I am not by myself. I have here with me a fellow therapist, but also a dear friend who has accepted this invitation to record an episode on a topic that is dear to me, is a topic that I think it's very important to cover when we talk about emotional well-being and mental health. And that's the topic of suicide. Here with me, I have Lauren Jenkins. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor, a certified clinical trauma professional with over 16 years of experience providing treatment, but also is the owner of the Journey to Well, which focuses on offering training and support to organizations, emotionally healthy staff, leadership, and work environments, which I love.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So honored to be here.
Oh, I love, do you know I love you?
Same. It is the same.
And Lauren and I met not too long ago because, believe it or not, therapists also need their space to, what do we say, to enjoy and talk to each other.
Yes.
So we started this group that we meet once a month and we support each other and we love each other. And as soon as I met her, I thought, I need her in my group of humans close to me.
Mutual. It is mutual.
Well, thank you again for being here. It's a pleasure to have you. And I do know, as a fellow therapist, as a fellow trainer, and as a fellow human, I do know that this topic is dear to you as well. And you have seen it as something important to talk about in your career and in your life.
Absolutely.
In my case, as a therapist who works in an emergency room, I see it on a day-to-day basis, and more since COVID, believe it or not, patients who come of all ages with suicide attempts or suicidal behavior or the thought that they don't want to live anymore. Mm-hmm. And I started my work at the emergency room 11 years ago, and I thought this happens too often, mm-hmm. and we don't talk about it. And then, of course, I started my research and learning more and more, and I realized, wow, talking about it is the most effective or one of the most effective ways of preventing it, but we don't do it enough.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts? What's going on? What make us not talk about something that happens more often than maybe hurricanes, fires, earthquakes? We prepare kids in school to do all this stuff, but we don't talk about how to prevent suicide.
Yes. So in my journey, both professionally and personally, some of the feedback that I've heard from individuals is kind of like, oh, well, if we talk about it, it's going to plant the idea there. And in addition to all the things you've shared about me, I am a huge suicide prevention advocate. Personally, I lost my childhood best friend to suicide. Mm-hmm. And so I spent a lot of advocacy work, bringing awareness and information. So one reason is misinformation. Mm-hmm. Second is the stigma.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We have seen our society on social media platforms in many places talk about mental health and even suicide. But I still think that there's still a stigma in many communities associated with this topic.
Yes, and sometimes we think that if we ask somebody about suicide or talk about suicide, it might increase the risk of that happening, or then it will encourage the person to do it. In my trainings, many times I say, well, if somebody comes to you and say, hey, Maria, are you thinking about killing your neighbor? Oh, no, but now that you said it, maybe I do.
Right.
It doesn't make much sense.
Not at all.
And usually what I've learned is that people, they want to stop living with the pain that they're having. So somebody opening the conversation is actually like a lifeline, like, oh my goodness, are you a human being that I can talk to about how I'm feeling, and you will be able to listen to it and help me connect with resources or give me hope? Or
yes, absolutely. I think I've heard it described as sometimes it's like taking the lid off of the pot of boiling water by having someone who's courageous enough to ask that question and hear and listen,
Because how lonely can that feel?
Yeah.
That you are suffering alone and not feeling like you can talk about it because you might be labeled as whatever you think you might be labeled, or people thinking, come on, a lot of people do the preaching, but you have so many things to be happy for. Why would you be thinking about suicide? And you have your family. You wouldn't do that to your family and leave them with that pain. Not helpful.
Right. And many folks have difficulty of knowing how to hold the space. Their goal, their intent and desire is like, I just want to get you out of this space, when the truth is, I just need to know you're here.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So having said that, yes, we can talk, and my invitation will be to talk about this more. But people might be asking, when do we know to start this conversation, right? And maybe this is a good time to talk about warning signs. And this conversation, I do want to say that we can all play a role in preventing suicide or breaking down the taboo about these conversations. We can all play a role in opening this conversation and helping someone who's struggling. And one way of doing that is becoming aware of warning signs.
Absolutely.
So let's give you listeners a list of things that might not be the only things, but things that can be very helpful to notice in someone that might be a sign that the person is struggling. And even you will not know right off the bat if somebody's thinking about suicide, but these are signs that would invite you to start that conversation of how are you doing? I've noticed this or that. How are you feeling lately? That kind of stuff. So what are some of those warning signs? We can just brainstorm here together.
Absolutely. I think that if you're starting to see individuals maybe talking, writing about death or suicide, I know particularly in our younger population, if they've had a celebrity or someone that they admire die by suicide, it can increase a risk.
And Lauren, let me say something really quick. Last year, when my teenager was in school, during the school year, 5 times she was either in a group chat or somehow a kid mentioned their thoughts of suicide. My kid, thankfully, I know this doesn't sound humble, but I think I've trained my teenager in a way that if you ever see any of these signs, mommy needs to know, we need to do something about it. She told me, and one of them, she was able to contact the mother and let her know. Another time we call 911 and for a wellness check. But usually we see these posts or texts, and we think, oh, that is right. They're not going to do anything. They just they're just seeking attention. And then I always say in my house and in my trainings, not on my watch.
I'd rather you be upset with me and alive we can figure that out later,
Mhm.
as opposed to missing the sign. Yeah.
But it happens. People put it, even adults put it on
Mhm.
Instagram. I'm going to kill myself
Yeah.
and none of you can do anything about it. Doesn't matter. It's not my job to determine what's behind it. It's my
Absolutely.
job as a human to
Mhm.
help somebody else stay safe. All
Absolutely.
right. What else?
I would also say that we see it when individuals feel isolated or trapped, right?
Mhm.
We also see it, a warning sign that I feel that is very important to emphasize a lot. There's a misperception of like, oh, a person who's really, really sad. It's a dramatic change in mood. Dramatic change in mood. So not just seeing someone change, but if their normal behavior pattern shifts, so
Mhm.
they're very happy all of a sudden, that's where we
Mhm.
also want to begin to ask those courageous conversations and questions.
Excellent
Mhm.
point. Yes, I can also
Mhm.
think, and feeling trapped for adults can be a divorce,
Yeah.
can be losing their
Mhm.
job, can be,
Absolutely.
those changes that you
Mhm.
feel doesn't matter what I do, this is not going to
Significant
change.
financial.
Yes.
Yep. Loss. Mhm.
And with teenagers, feeling trapped might be ending that relationship
Mhm.
or the picture that is going around of them
Mhm.
in their, naked or doing something, and then it's sort of,
Absolutely. Mhm.
getting affairs in order is, it
Mhm.
sounds like an obvious one, but
also,
yeah,
giving away things.
yes, giving away
in the midst
things.
of affairs and order.
Yes. Access to means, making a plan
Mhm.
when you see that somebody's, buying things that look suspicious or not their norm,
Mhm.
right? If they never owned guns and all of a sudden they bought one, we would have some questions. Again, worst case scenario is, the person responds and gives a very clear explanation of what the plan is, but it's a good way to start that conversation. People feeling that there's no reason to live.
Yeah.
We
Lost
do
purpose.
hear those comments sometimes, Lauren.
Yeah.
I've said it myself sometimes. I'm like, oh my goodness, if I die tomorrow, that will be perfectly fine.
Mhm.
And people don't ask me, Maria, I noticed you said that yesterday, or hey, hold on one second. You just said that. Are you okay?
Mhm.
Are you thinking about suicide?
Mhm.
Sometimes we say these comments and again, we minimize them. We think they're joking. Ask.
Mhm.
Why
Absolutely.
not? Hey, Lauren, I heard you, or I saw you yesterday and you looked not your usual, and even your appearance, maybe you're not. For those of you who don't know Lauren, obviously she's like, I mean, even the way she presents herself already makes you smile, right? She's like this pleasant human beings. If I notice something, it's like, hey, Lauren, I've noticed, or I noticed that you're going through something difficult right now. I want to check on you. How are you doing? Are you thinking about suicide? Right? What else could be part of warning signs that we want to share with our listeners?
I think it's also important to emphasize that we know that also individuals who struggle or suffer with chronic illness could increase a risk, right? Might be a warning sign as they talk about it and navigate that. That can be very difficult.
Yes.
So we want to ask those questions for sure.
Yeah, which is kind of part of the feeling trapped sometimes, that you feel that your physical situation or medical situation might not change and is hopeless.
Pressure. Just, I know we talked about different pieces of like loss, but like just an insurmountable amount of pressure to achieve or to do certain things. I mean, that's very broad, but we want to be mindful of that as well.
Feeling like a burden to others. I hear this a lot from adolescents. It's like, well, I think my mom and dad will be better without me because I've caused so much trouble because school calls complaining about my behavior all the time. So they do feel like a burden, and they truly believe that their parents will be happier if they're not around. Withdrawing, isolating.
Yes. Yeah.
And in teenagers is common for them to withdraw from their parents, right? It's like, we're not cool at that point. They just want to hang out with their friends. But in that case, if they're also withdrawing from friends.
Right. All of the things that they actually really enjoyed. Yes.
For adults, if they stopped going to events or get-togethers or that kind of thing, and it's a change in their behavior, please notice it and start the conversation. So these are just some of the warning signs. Of course, you can do some research on your own, you listeners, and we will give you some resources at the end. But then the question comes, how do we start a conversation about suicide? And how do we ask about suicide? What do you think, Lauren?
So I initially thought I was going to just give a quick answer, but I think I want to go back a little bit. I know you and I, we do a training. We also are certified trainers for mental health first aid.
Yes.
And, not to give too much information, but we watched that video where it talks about where the lady comes out and says, hey, how you doing? And her response is like, actually, I'm not doing well. And some of the individuals are like, whoop. What do I do next? How do I respond to this? I'm not ready. I was not expecting that. I was just like, are you okay? I'm expecting, yes, I'm good. So I always say one of my quotable quotes is awareness is the first step to sustainable change and liberation. And so for those who are listening, my ask is, where are you in your awareness of being courageous and able to ask that question? And if the honest response is, I'm not sure, this is where we begin to encourage you to get plugged into opportunities to practice asking the question. But ways to do it, I mean, the most upfront one is, are you thinking about killing yourself? And the reason why we emphasize kill and not harm is because someone who is experiencing suicidal ideation is not about wanting to harm. They want to end the pain. They want to end it. So no, I'm not thinking about harming myself. I don't want to harm it. I just want to end it. So we want to be very clear and explicit about what we're asking. Are you thinking about suicide?
Which you can also ask about the harm, but not assume that it's the same question as suicide.
Absolutely.
Because many people, and this will be maybe another episode, but there is a difference between self-harm and suicide. Because whether you, listener, agree with it or not, some people use self-harm as a coping skill that helps with the pain at that moment, but they have no intention to kill themselves.
Sacrifice one part to be able to survive, to save the rest.
Right.
So yes.
So we should not assume that it's the same thing. So great point. Are you thinking about killing yourself? I also use, are you thinking about suicide? And
absolutely.
And if you feel that the word suicide and killing is maybe too heavy for you, I also give the option of, are you thinking about ending your life?
Ending your life, I also have another one, because the thing we talk about, I believe, when you think about a person getting to a place of suicide, I'll say it that way, I believe two factors that are common are hopelessness and loss of connection. And so I think we even used this word earlier, but like sometimes I'll even ask it this way: has life or things gotten so desperate, so difficult that you have considered or thought about suicide? So it's not putting the focus there, but that there is a piece of desperation, of hopelessness. And that just kind of brings an entry into it, to not put so much force on the suicide, but that I'm in a place of suffering. I'm in a place of desperation. Another way to ask it, thinking about the like medical pain scale from 0 to 10, 10 being your pain, right? So from 0 to suicide, where are we today? And being able to talk about it from that piece.
Oh, I love that one. I've never used that one. Love it. Yeah. So if 1 is no thoughts of suicide whatsoever, and 10 is I'm thinking about killing
all the things.
So once we ask about suicide, and here's one point, it doesn't have to be a long conversation. It doesn't have to be somebody that you really know. And I'll tell you this by experience as an advocate for suicide prevention. I was at the grocery store not too long ago, and I'm ringing my things right at the cashier. And it was a Friday around noon. And the cashier starts conversation and say, oh, so you're out of work today? And I'm like, yes, I'm not working today. And he's like, what do you do? And I was like, I work here at the local emergency room. Oh, are you a nurse? I'm like, no, I'm a mental health therapist. Oh, so do you see patients that feel like numb, or like they, their heaviness in their heart? And I knew right off the bat that I had like 3 more items on the belt that I needed to do my thing quickly. And I said, yes, we do see patients like that. Are you feeling that way? Are you thinking about suicide? To the cashier, I've never seen in my life before, at the grocery store on a Friday noon, right? He replied, no, but I did. And thankfully, I looked for help and I feel better now. So then I said, well, now you know, if you didn't, that there are mental health professionals at the local emergency room. If you ever need immediate help, you know where to find us. And
powerful.
as I just grabbed my bags and leave, of course, I got to my car and I was shaking. I cried a little, even doing this for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So the invitation is not that you're not going to feel that knot in your tummy, like, or scared about asking the conversation. It's about still doing it and knowing that asking that question can really save a life.
Absolutely. That's why we call it that courageous conversation, that ability to ask that courageous question. Absolutely. Wow.
So, but people ask me, what if you would have said, yes, I do want to kill myself. I want to kill myself. So here, let's give people some tools of what to do if you have the courageous and important and life-saving conversation and you ask one of those 4 questions that we gave you.
Yes.
And the person says no, then okay, just no. And this is my suggestion. You tell me yours. One way is maybe responding, well, I just want you to know that if you ever feel this way, I'm here to listen, and I can be one of those humans that you can approach if that's ever a thought that crossed your mind. I want to do everything I can to support you. What other options can you think of if somebody says, no, thanks for asking? I would never do that. No.
Absolutely. I do love the fact of following, like the follow-up and providing, hey, please know that there are resources available. One thing I do want to emphasize to those who are listening, make sure you are aware of your capacity and bandwidth. If your response is not Maria's, where, hey, I want to be that person, that is okay. The one thing we encourage folks is then get familiar with what resources are in your local communities that maybe you have in your phone, or maybe it's a card that you share from your local community, or even the national level resources and supports we'll talk about a little bit later. So absolutely. So if they say no, also finding out, I call them your protective factors. Like, this is amazing. That's great. What are some things that have helped you that keep you here, and having them be able to verbally communicate them and saying, my family, or, my purpose in life, etc. So identifying what are those anchors, I like to call them, that keep them here.
Love it. And that's a great point you said before, Lauren. There are many times that I have chosen not to respond because I'm not in a good emotional place at that time.
Yeah.
And you can still maybe have somebody else approach, or just hand somebody,
Absolutely.
hey, I don't know what's going on in your life. I just want you to know that there are these numbers that you can always call 24/7 for support. And that's all the response and intervention that you have.
Absolutely. One of the, even in our local area where we're located, I make sure to have one of our very notable local resources in my phone ready to share if need be, as well as the national information. So.
Yes. And even a step back, even to start the conversation of asking the question, you can approach somebody and say, I've noticed, we said that, right? I've noticed. Okay, we did. Don't listen to me. Thank God.
Well, I'm glad you brought that back up, because again, that's the difficult part. Your intention, your desires, you are concerned and you want to make sure that they stay alive. And sometimes our intention and what we go in may not have the same impact. And so the one thing that I want to highlight, Maria, that you shared is you used your I statements. I noticed being able just to speak as objective as possible of things that you have measurably seen, kind of does not push kind of this judgment, if I may say. The goal is to create space that a person feels safe and able, I will say, to be able to share. And so, without the threats, without the judgment, can open that space for them.
Right. Like maybe not staying away from asking, like, you're not thinking about suicide, do you?
Right.
Right. Because that's judgment. And no, I don't want to say yes. Or, hey, you look sad. You're struggling. What's going on? Well, I will feel it kind of an attack, right? Like, well, no, I'm not.
Or even, as I think we talked about earlier, what would your family think? Why would you want to leave them? Again, that's coming in a space of judgment. The intention is you're trying to find the anchor for them. And really, we need to emphasize about, again, hopelessness, loss of connection and hopelessness. So how do we help bring hope? And how do we help bridge connection when someone feels isolated and hopeless. If you keep that in mind as you are entering in that, that's going to be important. Asking the questions that promote hope and connection.
Love it. And remaining as calm and curious
Absolutely.
as we can.
I love the visual of like being a duck on the water. So it's like you're gliding, but your feet are moving. Like you're getting it done, right?
That's the knot in your tummy. Like, oh my goodness. Now, if the person answered yes, we ask somebody, are you thinking about killing yourself or are you thinking about ending your life? And the person says yes. What do we do next?
I think it's important to determine if they've thought about a plan, if they have a plan, if they have access to means. We want to know and find out where that information is. The other piece about it is we do not want to keep individuals alone. If this happens to be over a text or over virtual, we want to make sure we know where this person is. Can we get an address so we can at least know how to get someone to them?
So a good follow-up question, if somebody answers yes to the suicide question, is, do you have a plan?
Absolutely.
The person might say, no, I don't have a plan. It's just a thought. And that's okay, right? If the person answers, yes, I have a plan, then the follow-up question would be, what's your plan?
Exactly.
My plan is that I have these pills at home from my partner or my parents or wherever that I'm planning to take. That is an immediate help response.
Absolutely.
Right?
We're calling someone. And again, we emphasize it's important to support based on your capacity and your skill set. And so I know especially if it's a loved one, when you're close to it, I know as a professional, we're human too. And when it's close, I got to call someone else, even though I might be equipped and trained, I got to call someone else because it's too close for me. So that's important. So if they do say that, then we're calling our mobile crisis response. We're calling the 988, or even possibly even 911, depending on the level of involvement.
And if the person, I've gotten this question before, if the person, no, I don't want you to call anyone, my response, which by the way, it doesn't happen often, people do want to be helped most of the time. My response is, your safety is a priority to me right now.
Absolutely.
And I want to do everything I can at this moment to help you stay safe. And I believe the best thing I can do at this time is to bring more people to the situation so you are here tomorrow, so you stay safe.
Yeah. I always say too, like, I'd rather you be upset with me and alive and we can figure out that later, right?
Correct. So resources that we want to share is all over the U.S. You can dial 988 for 24/7 professional support by mental health trained professionals. 911 is also a way to do this. Most likely, police might come and take this person to the closest emergency room for emergency evaluation.
And if I could add to the 911, it's also important to emphasize that it is in relation to a suicidal, ideation or attempt, or even if it's a mental health crisis. Really give as much information as possible. If it's related to a mental health or suicide matter.
Yes, you can visit amazing websites like the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Absolutely.
Has done a beautiful work with providing resources on their website. Any other resources you can think of?
The National Alliance on Mental Illness. Not only do they provide great statistics and information, they also have amazing community support groups for individuals with lived experience. And so, you can go to their website as well.
And if you are a listener to this episode and you have lost someone to suicide, our thoughts are with you.
Yes, absolutely.
What can we say to people who are listening that lost somebody to suicide? I want you to know that you're not alone, that we do understand is a different type of grief.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just as we say for individuals who are struggling, making sure that you also are connected and have hope. And as I mentioned, because just a survivor of suicide loss, what are some ways that can help you feel reconnected? A lot of times I work with individuals who are survivors of suicide loss through advocacy work. That's one of the reasons why I'm involved with like AFSP and also other nonprofits and that are about this mission of suicide prevention.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
And if you are a listener who is thinking about suicide, please know that even if it doesn't feel like it, your life matters
Yes.
and your life is always worth living.
Absolutely.
Please stay with us. You're not alone. It can get better, right, Lauren?
Yes.
Feeling better is possible. Please reach out for help to either your supportive friends or one of these resources that we shared here and will be on the show notes as well. Please don't sit in it alone. You don't have to sit in it alone.
Mhm.
Thank you, Lauren, so much.
Thank
It
you,
was
Maria.
such a pleasure to have you.
So happy to be
I
here.
think we should do part 2 at some point, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
Yes.
please, how can people find you?
Sure. Yes. So on all social media platforms, that being Facebook and Instagram, I'm at the journey #2 with the number 2 well. So at the journey to well. And in my website is the journey to, that being the number, well.com.
Great.
Mhm.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you like this episode and would like to listen to similar episodes, please let me know. And I will see you next time.